The palace was silent, unnervingly so. Beyond the marble halls of Topkapi, Istanbul slept beneath a silver moon, completely unaware that history was being rewritten within its walls. The scent of rosewater drifted through the corridors, clinging to the stone. Torches burned low, their flames whispering against the marble. Even the fountains, which usually sang through the courtyards, had fallen still, as if the empire itself was holding its breath. In the Sultan's private chambers, attendants moved like shadows. Faces veiled, steps hushed. Every gesture was a ritual. They washed hands, scattered petals, and folded silks with trembling reverence. The air was heavy, thick with the sense that tonight, the very heart of the empire would begin to beat differently. For Sultan Suleiman, this moment was unlike any before. He had conquered kingdoms, crushed rebellions, and forged laws that bent nations to his will. Yet, he had never defied the oldest tradition of his own throne. For centuries, Ottoman sultans lived with their concubines, but they never married them. An emperor could not be bound by a single woman. But tonight Suleiman would do the unthinkable. Hurrem, once known as Alexandra from Ruthenia, had entered this palace in chains. Years ago, she walked these same halls as a terrified captive. Now, beneath the golden lanterns, she walked again, not as property but as a bride, a concubine turned wife, a foreign slave turned empress. The harem had buzzed with fevered whispers all day. Some women wept, others prayed. Most gossiped in fear because no woman had ever achieved what Hurrem had. She had captured the Sultan's will. Even the powerful Valide Sultan Hafsa, whose word once ruled the harem, remained locked in her chambers. She knew better than to challenge what was already decreed. Her son had made his choice, and that choice bore the face of Hurrem. The wedding itself was not a grand affair. There was no public procession, no drums, no royal announcement to the city. It was just quiet vows, a prayer, and a signature that would echo through the centuries. When the imam recited the verses, Hurrem's eyes did not waver, and when it was done, she was no longer just the Sultan's favorite. She was Haseki Sultan, the legal wife of the ruler of a vast and powerful empire. Outside the royal chambers, Grand Vizier Ibrahim Pasha paced his quarters, sleepless. He had been Suleiman's brother-in-arms, his closest friend, the man who believed himself indispensable. But now, as the empire slumbered, Ibrahim sensed that something irreversible had begun. The change wasn't happening on a battlefield, but in the Sultan's heart. He whispered to himself that a woman's love should not rule an empire, but deep down he felt the first tremor of fear, the fear of being replaced. In the royal chamber, candles trembled. Hurrem stood before a mirror framed in ivory wrapped in red and gold. Her heart beat hard, not with fear, but with fierce certainty. She had fought countless unseen wars within these palace walls, wars of patience, wit, and silence. And tonight, she had won. Her triumph wasn't born of simple seduction, as her rivals whispered. It was a victory of intellect. She had taken the time to learn the Sultan's mind, to understand the poet behind the conqueror, the man behind the imperial title. When Suleiman entered, his eyes held both defiance and devotion. He had silenced his viziers, ignored his mother, and broken centuries of custom for her. This wasn't just a scandal. For them, it was destiny. Hurrem lowered her gaze, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. They both knew exactly what their union meant. It was love, wrapped in power, affection forged in absolute defiance of tradition. Outside, the Bosphorus shimmered like molten silver beneath the moon. The empire, vast and restless, held its breath. In the harem, silence turned to grief. Mahidevran, once the Sultan's beloved and the mother of his firstborn son Mustafa, sat motionless. She had believed herself untouchable, but now, she watched her rival rise like the dawn, completely erasing her place in the Sultan's heart. The servants moved quietly around her, afraid to even whisper her name. As the night deepened, the palace drew in close around its secret. Hurrem and Suleiman sat together beneath soft lanterns, Between them lay no throne, no formality, only the immense weight of the choice they had made. He spoke of his empire, of wars, betrayals, and the burdens of his rule. She listened intently. Her answers were measured, her words few but sharp. She promised him not just love, but a loyalty that would outlast them both, a loyalty that would guide his sons and guard his legacy. In that moment, Hurrem became more than just a woman in his life. She became his mirror, the one soul who could reflect both his strength and his doubts. When dawn finally crept across the city, the first call to prayer echoed from the minarets. Suleiman rose and turned to the window. Hurrem stood beside him, her hands folded, her gaze steady. They said nothing. They didn't need to. That sunrise marked not just a new day, but a new age for the Ottoman Empire. When the news finally reached the city, the empire reacted with shock. Scholars muttered about sin. Viziers debated the legality of the marriage. The janissaries, loyal only to power, stood indifferent. But among the common people, the story began to take root. Some said the Sultan was bewitched by a red-haired enchantress. Others whispered that God had blessed him with a woman of great wisdom. And some, very quietly, said that love itself was the greatest rebellion of all. In the days that followed, Hurrem's power grew, not through formal decrees, but through sharp understanding. She watched, she learned, and she remembered everything. She knew which vizier's voice trembled when he was lying, which eunuch carried more than just messages, and which servant's silence signified true loyalty. Her words to the Sultan were never wasted. A single glance from her could decide the fate of a powerful man. The Valid Sultan watched in silence, torn between pride in her son's happiness and a deep sense of foreboding. She saw in Hurrem her own ambitious youth, but she also saw her own replacement. She prayed quietly, asking heaven to spare the dynasty from the potential cost of such a powerful love. Ibrahim Pasha's unease deepened into dread. He saw every glance, every shared gesture between the Sultan and his wife, as another thread pulling his own influence apart. His loyalty began to twist with envy. Hurrem sensed it all. She could feel the tension rippling beneath the palace's gold and marble. But she didn't fear it. She had learned long ago that power is never simply granted. It is taken, earned, and defended in silence. That night, the night she became empress, would not be remembered for its tenderness but for its transformation. It was the night a woman's mind officially entered the heart of an empire. Years later, when historians wrote of Suleiman's magnificent reign, his laws, his wars, his justice, they would find her name everywhere in the margins, like an unseen author. Her will was in his decrees. Her counsel was in his letters. Her legacy was in the sons who would one day rule. And it all began here, in the hush of that single night, in the defiance of love over law. As morning unfurled, the city came alive. Merchants opened their stalls unaware that the empire's balance had shifted forever. The domes of Topkapi glowed under the rising sun. The guards changed their posts. The empire moved on, but something in its rhythm had changed. Deep within the palace, Hurrem Sultan sat beside her husband, no longer the captive who entered in chains, no longer the concubine who had to smile among enemies. She was now the Sultan's wife, the first of her kind, and the architect of her own destiny. In time, her name would become a legend, adored by some, cursed by others. She would be blamed for bloodshed, praised for her vision, and envied for her incredible reach. But history, like the Bosphorus flowing beneath the palace, would carry her story onward, unbroken and unforgotten, and though the candles burned out and the whispers faded, the echo of that night endured. Because in those quiet chambers, a woman had reshaped the very meaning of power. The empire would never be the same, and neither would its ruler. Hurrem Sultan had risen from bondage to sovereignty, not by sword, nor by birthright, but by the unyielding force of her will. And as the morning call to prayer soared over Istanbul, the world bore silent witness that an empire built by men had, for the first time, been remade by a woman's heart. Thank you for watching. If you were captivated by the story of Hurrem Sultan, Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more tales of history's most powerful figures. See you next time.